Hello, Brianna. Hello, George.
Hey,
Hi,
Tim.
Is that Lori? Hello,
Hey,
Lori.
Brianna.
I think that might be Mike.
Oh, this might be Mike.
Hmm.
Yeah, Mike's on the phone.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Hello, how are you?
Good, good. Is there
I'm,
anybody else, Brianna, that's going to join us from the town, or is this?
I'm not sure if Lauren's coming on or not. And I was assuming Lori was coming. Well, she might hop in a couple minutes.
Yeah, no, that she usually does. But we have a quorum. We have a quorum, which is good. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first order of business is to approve the minutes that George has submitted. I reviewed them and didn't find any objection to them. Mike, do you have any comments on them?
No, thank you.
Okay. All in favor of accepting the minutes as written, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. By the way, I've been asked to identify ourselves, even though there's nobody else here. But we have on the phone members of the Cohasset Harbor Infrastructure Planning Working Group, George Baumgarten, Tim Davis, and Mike Sardina. And the harbor master will likely join us somewhere along the way. Brianna, do you have the ability to put that timeline up?
Yes, I'll share it now.
That's probably a good thing to have up there so we can kind of go through it. Great. Okay. What I'll do is I will start giving you an update of what I know on these. Can you move up to the next page? There we go. The Parker Avenue boat ramp is now out for bid. Foth Engineering sent us a bid package, and that has gone out. I'm not sure who it went out to, but it is out, and my guess is we'll start to get bids in soon. The funding has been secured. The Seaport has approved the.
Hey, Tim.
Pardon me?
Tim, this is George. I was just wondering, do you know the date that was sent out for bid and who is running that bidding for the town of Cohasset?
Well, Michelle Leary will be running it for the town of Cohasset. Carlos Pena of Foth Engineering is running it from that standpoint. It went out, I believe I got a notice this week, so it was earlier this week. I don't know the exact day, but
Great.
it went out. And again, what has happened in the past, which I suspect will happen, is that bids will come in, and then Michelle will ask a group of people to come together to review the bids and discuss what we think of them. And certainly I'll include any of the CHIP that have an interest in that in reviewing the bids.
And one other question, do you know if there was a deadline for replying to the bids?
Yes, there was. George, I don't have that right with me, but why don't I send you the bid package and you can go through it and get what information you need out of that.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
I will make a note to myself. Yourself.
And I'll be happy to remind you on that. Thanks, Tim.
Okay. Bid package.
Tim, just to jump in here, I think the bid package is being made available to the bidders on October 6th. I'm not sure I think it's just been advertised at this point.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you, Brianna. You may be, you're undoubtedly more accurate in your understanding of where things are than I am, but nevertheless, George, I'll send it to you and then we'll follow it from there.
Terrific. Thank you, Brianna.
The Government Island Pier and lift is still moving along. As far as I know, we haven't gotten to the final drawings yet for approval. I know that we need to get sign off from various town folks before that happens. I know that Carlos has been working on that. It would be great to move that along. I still don't know whether we've gotten all the drawings the way everybody wants them. I know Carlos was working with the harbor master and perhaps one or two of the fishermen. So that should be getting close to a final resolution. But
So,
that's
Tim,
going to be a significant project, and it's going to require significant funding. So construction targeted for next summer, I think, is probably aggressive, but that's a good target to have.
Tim, more questions. Appreciate the opportunity to sort of work through this. So I know at last month's meeting, lots of good feedback, and I know Mike Sardina and a couple of others asked questions, and Carlos is going to incorporate those into the drawings,
Yeah.
and probably is doing more with Lori, which is great. That being said, once that's done, do we have a sense of what it takes to get approval by town of Cohasset? Who needs to approve and how we go about achieving that approval so that we can then move forward with the Seaport Economic Council?
Yeah. I'm not.
If you don't know, it's okay. I'm just curious what that process is.
I'm trying to think about what other projects, approval process, other projects have gone through, but I don't know if there's a formal approval necessary for this project, because I don't think Parker Avenue went through a formal approval process. I don't think, the harbor master's office has not gone through a formal approval process. The conveyor at Lawrence Wharf hasn't. So I'm not sure, but what Foth Engineering would, and I think all of us would like to do, is to make sure that any and all constituents have reviewed it and are comfortable with it, where it's going.
Yeah. So, I mean, gosh, if we were to set a target, it'd be great to do it at next month's CHIP meeting, have Carlos come back with the right drawings, give people a lot of notice, and,
Well, it would. It would also be one we could do at the if we do have a harbor committee meeting at some point in my lifetime. We'll do that. But so one way or the other, we'll get Carlos to do that.
Wouldn't at the last CHIP meeting that we had, Carlos did do those presentations. Those were drawings that were I would consider certainly more they're beyond preliminary. Wouldn't we have had the opportunity, unless he had a whole bunch others that are part of that package, he just kind of gave us a couple of sheets worth of more pertinent stuff. But wouldn't we be in a position to submit these preliminary plans? They're preliminary. They're not even theoretically construction documents to the Seaport Economic Council.
Well,
we'd be able to.
That's what Carlos wants to do. As soon as everybody who has an interest in it has had a chance to consider them and make comments on them, then he wants to go to the Seaport Council for funding, for grant funding, at least for the next stage.
Yeah.
So,
I know, Tim, in the minutes from last month, we had Matt Marr and Mike Lane, both, they did Q&A in addition to Mike Sardina and Sam Wakeman. And I think if Carlos can indicate that he's incorporated their considerations into those plans he showed, and do one more review, I would hope that's also sufficient per Mike's comment to move forward with Seaport Economic Council, unless there's other, budgetary review by the town that's required. But I don't know. I think he said that until we get I think the budget process will happen, on an ongoing basis once we figure out how much this might cost.
Right. I'll connect with Carlos in the next few days, see where he stands with that, and ask him to make another final report to us, either at the next CHIP meeting or at the Harbor Committee meeting.
Great.
Okay, Lawrence Wharf, I have no idea if Lori is not on. She is the one that's been overseeing the conveyor system. I don't know where that stands. Brianna, do you know anything more about where that stands?
I've heard some. So when I was talking to Lauren, she said that they've identified a potential alternative that would be ADA compliant. And so that's what I know about that. But I talked to Michelle as well, and she said that the problem right now that's holding it up is the extensive lead times have been a challenge, and so they're working through that. So it's not that the project hasn't been killed or anything like that, but I think they're starting to discuss alternatives.
Okay, when you say they, do you know who's involved in those discussions?
I know that Lauren, I believe Lori, if Lori comes on, I'll have her give the update because I think she knows the most about this. But they identified some sort of alternative. I would say Lori is the person to talk to about that.
Yeah, right. That's,
And then is she working with Michelle Leary? Are those sort of the two
yes,
that are doing this?
Yes.
Okay.
they have been working on that.
Wasn't this conveyor belt system for Lawrence Wharf going to be ultimately relocated over to Government Island Wharf?
That was the plan.
Yeah.
If we have some other alternative here, Brianna, is that alternative being moved over there, or are we spending whatever dollars again for some kind of a conveyor system that the original intent for Lawrence Wharf over there at Government Island?
I can ask. So you all want it to be at Government Island ultimately? Is there a reason that we're looking at it for Lawrence Wharf at the moment?
Yeah, yes. The reason, Brianna, is that when we were a year ago, we were led to believe that we could simply put a conveyor system in the existing Government Island pier and dock system. But that's when we discovered that there was no Chapter 91 license for Government Island. And that's when Lori and Michelle got together and said, let's do a temporary solution at Lawrence Wharf. And then when Government Island is ready for it, we'll move it over there. So that's kind of the history of how we got to where we are now. It's a complicated issue because it requires not only ADA, but it requires all kinds of insurance and safety regulations and licensing and so forth. So it is a complicated issue. It's more than simply, a simple conveyor system. So hopefully we will find out more about that. But the fishermen really need a conveyor system and lift system without question.
Yes, I'll get an update for you on that.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the next page then. Okay. The issue of the seawall maintenance has kind of, you all have been a party to some of the communications that I've had. In my conversation with the town manager, he mentioned that the select board had no political interest in doing anything with the seawalls. That when I published that broadly, that came back and some of the select board said, yes, we do. And certainly a number of people around the folks that have an interest in the harbor have said, yes, they do too. And I think Carrie Thompson mentioned having a summit to discuss harbor seawall resiliency, as well as other Cohasset issues that have to do with resiliency in the face of climate change. I haven't heard anything more from that. So one of the things that I wanted to do at the Greater Harbor Committee meeting, should we ever have one, is to ask the constituents if they would like to have our own harbor summit to discuss resiliency. And I have gotten some feedback that people would be interested in doing that. So I'd like to consider that should we ever have a Harbor Committee meeting. By the way, George and Mike, have you completed your application for Harbor Committee?
Yes.
Oh, good. All right. I will put pressure on the select board then to get that done. Once you are approved, then we'll have a much more likely chance of getting a quorum for the Harbor Committee. Okay, moving on to the.
But just
Yeah.
on that note, Tim, I do, having been privy to the emails on the summit on resiliency and climate change, obviously a big topic. I do think Harbor Committee is an ideal committee to sponsor that.
Yeah.
I'm sure, I saw how many people were interested in it. I'm sure Harbor Committee will also get a quorum, and it would be great to do that, during the fall at some point. I'm all for it.
You have greater optimism than I, George. But anyway, we'll keep working on it, and I know Brianna will help us get there. So, okay, Old Salt House. That yeah.
Actually, we're still on the breakwater, right? Don't want to skip over that.
Okay.
I know you talked about seawall maintenance and the breakwater. I was thinking, just following up, Tim, in July, our notes are that you and Chris met with Jim Boudreau, who said he was, that Situate would be happy to hand jurisdiction of the breakwater to Cohasset.
Yes.
That's correct, right? And is it accurate that we're either still waiting for a new Cohasset Town Council to be identified, or is there a town council and this is just in the queue?
We have a town council, and apparently I am being penciled in for a meeting with town council sometime after the 1st of October, which according to my calendar is tomorrow. But so sometime in the next several days, I should hear of a potential meeting with town council, and that is one of the things that I will review. It's unclear to me exactly how this is going to move ahead. I know that there are a number of government agencies that certainly have potential jurisdiction here. The Army Corps of Engineers is one, and we are supposedly at some point, again, hopefully in my lifetime, going to have a conversation with Craig Martin, who is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers person who works with Cohasset on dredging and seawalls and breakwaters and everything else, that where the Corps has jurisdiction.
Yeah.
That conversation is sometime in the future, and I'm sure that we will.
But the first step here, I mean, it sounds great, is that we want for Cohasset, the town of Cohasset, to be able to speak on behalf of our harbor's needs for that breakwater, as opposed to having Situate speak up. So all we need is an agreement from Situate to grant us the right to speak on that behalf, and regardless, you have to speak with the Army Corps, right? And others. I'll just say, I think it's interesting, all the, we not only need jurisdiction, we also need to, why are we, what are some of the considerations of why we need jurisdiction, which is, all the bigger deal about either making it bigger or, updating the design. But do you think if we were to put together some sort of, called, I think in terms of business requirements spec that could help the town council to understand the scope of the jurisdiction that town of Cohasset needs in order to move forward with this, so that, they would be informed on how to, write a good starting agreement that Situate could
The
accept.
problem, George, is that it's a combination of nobody really knows who
Yeah,
owns the breakwater.
yeah,
And, I think what it amounts to is essentially like a quit claim, where Situate says, whatever we have, you can have on our behalf, and go forth and conquer. I think it's fairly simple.
but we're not asking for a change of, town lines here, right? We're just asking for a legal right to.
No, we're not.
We're sort of
not.
more like an easement than a quit claim, I would think. But,
Well, it's basically saying, if we Situate have jurisdiction, we now therefore bequeath to you Cohasset, whatever that jurisdiction
Okay.
is. And then we at least can have some standing when we talk to the
Yeah.
Army Corps and CCM and, various other people. That what really has to be done is an engineering study has to be done that incorporates the information, the data we have on sea level changing, sea level rising, and then to determine what really has to happen to that breakwater. Does it simply have to be raised by 2 or 3 feet,
yeah,
or does it have something that more extensive have to happen? But that's
but I do see we need the jurisdiction in order to have the right to fund the study through grants or otherwise. Somebody
That's-
has to apply
that's
for
the
that.
point. Yeah, exactly. That's the point.
And we need to be that party, right?
Yes.
Because we're the ones who care.
Yes, and Situate has no interest in funding that study.
Yeah, not surprising.
Okay. All right. And that,
Should we consider breaking that particular line item into 2 pieces, one for breakwater and one for seawall remediation? I think the breakwater one is going to be more complicated and much more spread out, and it's a completely different study than the seawalls, where the seawalls are associated with our harbor. More seawalls are on private property than are on public property, and that's another whole different process, and more politically charged and more financially charged and all that kind of stuff with respect to protecting the town. So I'm just wondering if it would be reasonable for us to just break those into 2 entities instead of the one.
I think that's a good idea. George, can you do that? Just break it down, and I will report as soon as I have the meeting with our new town council. And you add that to the timeline. So that will happen.
Just to throw an update on this too, Lauren and I met with Jason Bertner from CZM last week, and we talked more about it. Just to confirm, so we haven't identified who owns the breakwater officially, whether it was state-owned or Situate owned. I know it impacts Cohasset Harbor, but I just wasn't sure. So we haven't identified the owner?
Not definitively, Brianna. But the last time I talked to Craig Martin, when I was allowed to talk to Craig Martin of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, he told me that he thought that the state of Massachusetts owned it. From the documents that he had, he believed that the state of Massachusetts owned it. It happens to be in the town of Situate. So Situate, generally has both jurisdiction and standing to do anything with the breakwater. However, Situate has no interest in doing anything with the breakwater, as we know. So, once we have standing, then we can perhaps track down through the state who in the state, if the state and what agency within the state actually owns it, if anybody is willing to raise their hand and say they own it. I mean, it's one of these things that I don't think anybody is really excited about saying I own the breakwater.
Tim, it might be interesting to, looking at similar places, Situate has a breakwater, Rockport, Gloucester, they all have big breakwaters, and probably the land, that it sits on is not in question. So if we were able to find out whether the Army Corps or the state or the town owns those breakwaters, it might give us an indication of how this one is owned.
Well, it may. I think we can get to it. But again, right now we've got to have some kind of standing in this debate. So we'll try and get that.
We have an internal, well, I won't be there, but there's an internal meeting with town council the next week with Lauren, and they're going to identify. So we have the person, I believe, for the shellfish bylaw, but they're not quite sure who will be the person for the jurisdiction. So they're going to decide that at a quick meeting next week, and then we'll have a meeting to sit down and hammer out a letter with them.
Great.
So that is coming, and there is things happening.
Terrific. Thanks, Brianna. Okay.
Can I just ask one more clarifying question? So Brianna, you say there's going to be a town of Cohasset person assigned to be the jurisdictional
No,
owner
the
of
town
something?
council.
Town council.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you.
The town of Cohasset has new town council, and it's a firm. It's not just one person, it's a law firm. And within that law firm, apparently it's quite a large law firm. And within that law firm, there are people with different specialties. So that's what Brianna was referring to. One of them is a specialist in breakwaters, and the other is in shellfish regulation, I'm sure.
How about that? Awesome.
I've already drafted the shellfish regulation for review, so it's not going to be very heavy lifting for whoever that person is. Okay. Anything else on breakwater and seawall? The old salt house, really nothing much to report there. The retaining wall has been complete, and they are using that area. There's really not much to report there. The dredging, the last we heard from on dredging was from the harbor master, who had the forms that she was filling out to submit to the Army Corps.
Tim, I think Lori is on the call.
Okay.
Lori, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Hi, Lori. Can you give us a brief update on two things? One is the conveyor system for Lawrence Wharf, and the second is the harbor dredging, the channel dredging.
All right, the conveyor system, I guess all we need to do is, we've got the costs for everything, so we just need to go forward and order the conveyor built.
Oh, really? Okay.
Which will just be, maybe for 1 or 2 years, and then that conveyor system gets moved over to Government Island.
Okay.
Then on the dredging, 2 weeks ago, Army Corps came and did a survey of the channel and a superficial survey of the harbor. The best they could, considering, there are so many boats in the water.
Yeah.
And we have to wait for those results.
Okay, so they'll wait till the boats leave, and then they'll do another survey of the harbor?
No. They did enough of a superficial one.
Oh.
That, will give us a good enough idea of what's going on.
Oh, great. And when will those surveys be available?
I don't know. It sometimes takes a couple of months for them to, do all the work, the computer work that needs to be done.
Great. Okay.
Lori,
Thank you.
can I follow up just on the conveyor? Before you got on, Lori, I think Brianna had shared that there may have been some concerns about lead time for the order, at least as I understood it. And mostly I'm just trying to.
There was a problem with lead time. So it won't be for this year, it would be for next year.
So at this point, they even if it's ordered now, it might be installed over the winter. Is that possible?
In the spring, it would be installed.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. How are we doing with the ancillary issues of insurance and training and the rest of that? Have we addressed those yet, Lori?
Yeah, that's all been taken care of.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll show them next spring how to use it once we get it.
okay. Great. Well, that's good progress. That's good to hear. And
Lori,
happy to hear. What's that?
I'm sorry, Tim, for interrupting. Lori, is there any other installation requirements like bringing power to this thing from town lines or anything like that, that we also have to get into the pipeline here as far as construction? Is this,
We've
is this
addressed
electric?
all that. We're all set for the electric and for mounting plates and stuff. That's all been
Okay.
addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay. And it sounds like dredging is moving along. That's great. Okay. Can we move on to the next page? Okay. The Captain's Walk planning. I think we are at one point, Brianna, we were looking at potential funding to do a study of the Captain's Walk. Are we any progress on that?
Yes, we are on the select board agenda for October 5th to confirm at the very least, the scope of work we've gotten and the survey that we want to proceed with, but also, I believe, to clear the funding to make sure that we're approved to move forward with it. So that meeting is October 5th. And Tim, if you were able to come on, Lauren will probably have you promoted if you'd like to speak to the Captain's Walk
Okay.
project.
All right. I'd be happy to. I will put it on my calendar and happy to discuss it. That's great. The money we're looking for here would be for Cabanero to do a survey of the Captain's Walk? Is that what we're looking at?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, as soon as we have that, I will ask John if he will meet with us to discuss what he has in mind or what he's going to plan to do there, because I still have in the back of my mind that it makes little sense to put a Captain's Walk on top of a seawall that eventually is going to get changed. So I think we should keep these all in the same conversation so that we're all working at similar purposes here.
So Tim, I know that, Mike can probably chime in on this, getting, precise understanding of private ownership versus the town right of ways, is going to be a very useful part of that survey.
Yes. Yeah.
Regardless of seawalls.
Absolutely. Absolutely will. And it will impact a lot of other parts of the project as well. All right. Well, that's great.
Is the request for the preliminary studies dollar amount to $4,000, is that a dead issue, Brianna?
I'm not sure exactly how much money they're requesting to move forward with off the top of my head, but I think so they're moving forward with the property line survey. I wouldn't say that anything else was a dead issue, but they're just sticking with this for now.
Okay.
Well, that's not helpful, but nevertheless,
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to know what's going on with that. You just seem to ignore these kinds of things, and in order for us to have some kind of preliminary graphics for people to understand, it's not a survey and it's not an engineer's drawing, it's other stuff. So if that's just going to be pushed by the wayside, so be it. I just want to find out so we know what to do.
Well, what we'll do is this, Mike, at that October 5th meeting, I will raise this question. I will talk to the Captain's Walk and I will raise the request for the $4,000 as well. So let's you and I talk before the 5th and make sure that I present that appropriately.
Okay.
And just to clarify, I mean, they had just, Lauren and Jason and others at the town had identified the need to understand the property lines as just the first step to getting started and moving.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's fine, but that's for more specific understanding. The other is for general stuff that people have a picture to look at. A picture's worth 1,000 words to understand the complexities of this whole issue. It's not just the Captain's Walk. There's a lot of things, as Tim was just alluding to. There's a lot of things that are all tied together. And there is private property and there's public property, and it starts to lead to a understanding by the powers that be and the committees that there's more work here than just a survey leading to some kind of an engineered drawing. And the objective of this official stuff is to get a handle on how we're going to proceed with all this stuff and how we get buy-in from the various parties to address these things and how we move forward on a whole bunch of different issues. So that's those initial graphics. That's all.
Okay, we'll keep pushing on it, Mike. We're not gonna let it die.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on Captain's Walk? We'll move forward to the Elm Street corridor. I can report that the Elm Street corridor working group has met with Weston and Sampson. We've had couple of public meetings. We've had questionnaires that the public had filled out, and we're getting close to our next public meeting. I forget exactly when that's scheduled. Brianna, do you know when the next Elm Street corridor public meeting? It's coming up in the next, it's in October. I think there are one or two that are scheduled.
October 28th.
October 28th. Okay. And it's looking pretty good from what we've seen. That we've tried to keep it as straightforward as possible to make sure that the residents on both sides understand what it is that we're doing, and trying to make sure we're not taking what people consider their own private property, even though it is town property. So that we're trying to work within the guardrails there. But it should, the main impact that it will have is going from the village down Elm Street to the harbor. We'll have the view corridor when the Cohasset Harbor Inn comes down, and that's going to come down, I think, before the end of the year. And so that really is going to be spectacular. And then the intersection of Margin onto Border Street is going to be improved dramatically as well. So there's some really nice improvements on Elm Street that are coming.
Hey, Tim
Yes.
and Mike, do you know how many responses the town has received from the survey request?
I think there were 80 something, or maybe even more than 80. There was
close to 100.
Yeah, I
Close to
think
100.
there are quite a few. It was a good response for something like this.
That's awesome.
Okay. The Cohasset Harbor Inn redevelopment, as I mentioned, the Cohasset Harbor Inn, I think, is scheduled to come down before the end of the year. The only thing that is holding up actual construction is the final Chapter 91 permit, and they've been back and forth with the state on that, and that the developers feel that there's no issue in getting the permit. They're not asking for any big changes, and the comments they've gotten from the state have been positive. So I think that is a project that is underway and will be started with demolition before the end of the year.
Hey, Tim, that's awesome. Do you think we could get a representative of Cohasset Hospitality Partners to give the whole, an update to this group next month?
Yeah, they'd be happy to. They'd be happy to. Either this group or the Harbor Committee will.
Yeah.
I'll try to get them. Yeah. Either George or Ted would be happy to do it.
Mhm.
Okay. Let me tell you where we are with shell fishing. I actually met with Rick Barrow, who is a commercial fisherman and is has been appointed as the Cohasset Shellfish Constable. Rick is a wonderful guy and a full-time fisherman. He is very straightforward to say that he doesn't know much about what the duties and responsibilities are of a shellfish constable. He has not cashed his check from the town, so he doesn't feel as though he's fully engaged at this point. He needs to get training so that he can actually test the waters, any waters that are being considered for shell fishing. But he said he would do that once the lobster season is over. So he has assured me that he will do whatever has to be done to get him up to speed as a shellfish constable once the lobster fishing is done. So I will be encouraging him to do that, and we'll try to get that done. And at the same time, we'll get the bylaw done, which would be good. I can also mention that I have had a number of incoming queries about what deep water aquaculture might be for Cohasset and how it would play out. There are a number of technologies around the world that have deep water aquaculture that grow everything from clams, oysters, mussels, and then also various forms of seaweed, kelp, and so forth. So there are people that are interested in doing that, and I am continuing to work with them. And at some point, when there's anything that is definitive, we'll certainly discuss it in more depth. One thing that we definitely do need to do is to keep in mind that Government Island will be the place where any commercial aquaculture will offload, onload, and offload, and that's why having a lift system in addition to the conveyor system will be very important, because some of these things are pretty heavy when they come up.
Hey, Tim, on that note, does Government Island, is usage of it extended to citizens that are not living in Cohasset? I mean, so
Yes.
Situate, Hingham, others, are they
Yes.
allowed to use Government Island?
Yes, they are allowed to use it. They can't park there unless they have a permit to park there.
Okay.
That's for commercial fishing only, but yeah, you can use it. Laura, you can probably speak to the actual regulations of it, but it is primarily for commercial use, as I understand, and it's not limited to Cohasset residents. Okay, well, that's my understanding of it, and we have,
Okay.
as you may know, George, a large portion of the Cohasset Commercial Fishermen's Association, the lobstermen actually live in Situate and other towns around Cohasset. They don't actually live in Cohasset, so they can't.
Let's say, so they don't live here, but their boats are probably moored here.
Yes, their boats
Yeah.
are moored here. They have moorings, and you don't have to be a Cohasset resident to have a mooring in Cohasset Harbor either.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. The administrative stuff we know about. Brianna is working full-time for the Cohasset Harbor Infrastructure Planning Working Group, aren't you, Brianna? You have no other responsibilities or interests, I'm sure. Um, So one of the things that I would like to push forward when we have a harbor committee meeting is the governance working group. It's been approved. At one point, we did have a harbor committee member say that she would take that on to develop it and activate it. That hasn't happened yet. But it's one thing that I think at some point needs to be done, just to take a look at waterways, all of the waterways of Cohasset, and recommend a governance structure for all the waterways in Cohasset. Right now, we have we have the harbor is obviously the main focal point, but there's also the Gulf River, which has a Gulf River Association, which is not a town committee, but it's a private citizens. They try to manage and govern the Gulf River, but they're doing it for their private interests. Then there are also the shoreline has various ad hoc and other governance situations. The Sandy Beach Association oversees the Sandy Beach. The Sandy Cove Association, which is made up of private citizens, kind of looks at that. I don't know, and Lori, you could probably address this. I see a whole bunch of new moorings in inside of Whitehead on the western side of the channel going out. Does anybody have any jurisdiction over those or that area, or is that just a kind of when anybody can drop a mooring there who wants to?
No, it's just it's the residents that live right there.
Okay, so it's the residents, and the residents can do that. How about in Sandy Cove?
That is a free-for-all.
To my point. Anyway, so thank you, Lori. All right. So anyway, the governance is something that should be looked at, I think, and we do have a working group that's it's been activated and approved by the select board. So we just need to get somebody to take that on and to lead it. So we'll see. Okay. Are there any other issues that can come before this? I can mention that I know that Brianna, you spoke to the Coast Guard about can number 7. And do you know if there's been any progress on that?
Well, the Coast Guard hasn't gotten back to me yet, but he said he was going to look through the archives, and every can has an archive, so we can take a look at the history and figure out why it was taken out. He did explain that, you know, they went through a period where they were taking out a lot of cans because if it didn't have a clear necessity, or if they could justify it, they wanted to save taxpayer dollars. This is how it was explained to me on the phone, that taking out the cans reduces what taxpayers have to pay for to have the can sitting in the harbor. And he said if we wanted to get it put back in the future, we'd have to show demonstrated groundings and things over the past 30 years since it was taken out. I emailed Lori to see if there was any sort of documentation, and I emailed you, Tim, as well, and there isn't much in the way of documents to show that that's been the case. I know that we're concerned it's a safety issue, but if we had some sort of historical standing or anything like that, it would help. We can see, though, when he looks at the archives and see how that decision was made, and maybe think of a different way to move forward. But I think we're at a little bit of a standstill with it. And Lori, I don't know if you want to say anything else. I know you've kind of done research into it. And I think Lauren mentioned you had spoken to fishermen about the issue and things like that. Oh, I think she just dropped off. But
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, let's see where that goes. you know, I'm on record as saying that I think it's a safety issue, and I think it's important to have it there. It's hard if you're not familiar with the channel itself to know where it is once you get out to Whitehead. So anyway, let's see where that goes. I appreciate your input on that, Brianna. That's great. By the way, I see that there's a Joe Sugar on here. Joe, are you, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, and I apologize. I apologize for being for ghosting everybody, but I just have customers who've been coming in, so I just want to make sure I'm not you guys aren't talking around me. I apologize. Go ahead.
Okay, well, can you just let us know what your interest is? I see your docs behind you, so.
Sure. No, just from a Cohasset standpoint, Paul unfortunately is out of town, and obviously Paul's in the loop and knows what's going on, so there's no issues. The only two, of course, you guys are working through or whether it's you guys or the town with Paul working through the easement for the boat ramp. My immediate concern with Dan from an operational standpoint is just to make sure, our season ends October 15th. Between the 15th and say the 30th, we break the docks down, break the electric down and everything else. And then we pull the docks out of the water through the boat ramp.
Yep.
And, it looks like I don't really have to really worry about the week of the first week of November of construction starting to happen.
No,
so,
I don't think so.
Yeah, and then the only other concern, it's not for this meeting, which is why I didn't bring it in, is on sometime around April 15th, we put the docks back in the water.
Yeah.
And I think we can come up with solutions should the construction still be going on to solve it. But that's not to take people's time up. We can figure that out.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, Joe. And certainly, if there's anything I can do to help with those issues, I don't know why the easement has not been completed yet. Maybe we're waiting for that town council.
No, it's the issue is my understanding, and again, I don't want to speak out of turn. The issue is that the town hasn't given the surveyor the go ahead to actually survey it. So everyone can look at the survey and say, okay, once you get the survey, as everyone knows, once you get the survey done, that becomes the key document or the key piece of the document for the easement. So there's no structural issues with getting the easement done. It's just a matter of just dotting the i's and crossing the t's.
Well, it just needs to get done. Who for the town is working on that?
I apologize. I don't know. I know BSC has the proposal with the town to do the survey.
Oh,
And I know, and Paul's been in communication with people. I just don't know what the issue
my
is.
guess is Michelle is working on that.
And I heard from Michelle yesterday, actually, that the surveyors were out yesterday and that they're currently wrapping up the easements. So hopefully.
Oh, really? So they were out yesterday?
Yes,
Good.
this is for the government island area, the dock pier, lift system and everything.
No, this is for the boat ramp.
The boat ramp.
The
Next
Parker
to
Avenue
Cohasset.
boat ramp.
Yes.
The
Oh,
Cohasset.
right. I'm
Parker
sorry,
Avenue.
my notes are messed up, but yes, that's the same thing. I'm talking about the same thing. The Parker
Okay.
Avenue boat ramp. My notes blended into the wrong thing.
Okay.
Yes, so I was told that there were surveyors out yesterday and that
Great.
they should be wrapping up the easements as we speak. So hopefully that'll get taken care of very soon.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it's funny, but we were down there a couple of times yesterday, and usually BSC would have let us know, but that's awesome news. That's great. And, I mean, I think it's just a function of getting the work done. That's all.
Great. Okay. The next thing I wanted, yes, anybody have any other comments?
Well, I just want to ask Brianna, you seem to have, is there anything else we haven't asked you that you're working on regarding the harbor that you haven't had a chance to share with us today?
Well, she will.
Not
She will.
today.
No.
Because you keep coming up with good stuff.
Yeah. Well, Brianna also put together that chart of the funding opportunities.
Grants.
And
Yeah.
Brianna, are you continuing to update that as you get additional information? I know that I get incoming and I'll just forward those to you. So if you can make sure that we know where there is fun. I keep reading in the paper of different coastal towns getting grant funding of hundreds of millions of dollars. So I feel as though we're kind of the, the back end here. We're gonna.
Yeah, I'm still working on the grant spreadsheet. It's still a thing. And we just tried out the grants at cohassetma.org email the other day. I met with the Open Spaces Committee, or one of their grant subcommittee, and I had them email their grant requests to that email, and it went to Lauren, Brian, Jason, and Michelle, all the priority grant people.
Great.
So hopefully that system, as soon as we can figure out the details of like, when do you email that group? When do you email a point person? When do you like submit some sort of form? And we work through a process that'll work for everyone. But we're working on it. I think
wonderful.
it might take a while, but eventually we'll have a process, and so the town won't, burn without funding or anything.
Yeah, well, that has been something I've been harping on for several years, is to get that ability to know where the grants are, so that if we've got something we can apply for, we ought to apply for it. I mean, it's not that I don't fault the other towns from getting their hundreds of millions of dollars of grants. I just wonder why Cohasset has not been able to do that. Okay. I think that covers the
Actually,
main
Lori
things that I have.
Lori came back on just now, I see, and I think we had a question for Lori just as she was signing off.
What?
It was a question about, Brianna, did you answer that? I can't remember.
Yeah, if Lori, if you want to speak at all to the navigational can, I know that you had some of the research compiled on it and that you've looked into it, and so I completely defer to you on that.
I have documentation that the can, what we now would call 7, it used to be called number 1, is there in 81 on an Army Corps survey. It was on a NOAA chart, in 1982 version of a NOAA chart, and then in 1983 on another Army Corps survey chart, it was gone. And they laid a subsequent NOAA chart, it was gone. So it was probably taken out 82. So it's been 40 years since they took it out.
And Lori, I guess that according to Brianna, the Coast Guard was saying, do we have a record of groundings or other safety issues that would warrant them reconsidering putting it back in?
No, we have no documented grounding of, so that we don't have.
No, I think as I mentioned to Brianna, what typically happens, it's all sand there, and typically what happens when a boat runs aground, whether it's commercial or recreational, they can either back off or they wait for the tide to come in. And it generally doesn't result in any damage, at least so far, but there have been times at a minus tide, some of the fishermen have trouble out in that area.
Yeah.
That's in the channel when that hump area redevelops.
Yeah.
Which is between 8 and 10. Marker 8 and 10.
And Lori,
Right.
was that, do you know if that part of the channel was included in the survey that the superficial survey that the Army Corps just did?
Yes, they took care of the channel and the harbor.
Okay.
Lori, does the Army Corps consider the channel to go out to where that can number 7/1 was?
Yeah, because basically it was right across from number 8.
Yeah, the dolphin out there.
Right, the wooden one.
So they consider that still part of the channel. It's just unmarked.
Right, because I guess they feel there was no need for a marker there.
Right. Right. Well, they originally felt there was a need, and then they felt there wasn't a need because of whatever. Anyway, okay. Well, let's see where that goes. I'm not gonna I'm not going to belabor it if if nobody wants to take that up, if the Coast Guard doesn't want to put it back, we're not going to make a federal case out of it. But I just think it's appropriate to look at, and I appreciate Lori, you and Brianna both following up with that. Okay. Any
Channel marks don't necessarily designate dredged areas.
what's
So
could you-
it just designates, a lot of times, like in Cohasset, it's just marking rocks for different cans.
oh,
And none of those.
right. I know that. I guess if you look at a navigational chart, you see the channel actually does, going out of Cohasset Harbor, when it gets to Whitehead, it turns left to the north and northwest to go out to the Dolphin. And it's indicated on the charts. It's just that can would have made it a lot easier to tell that that's where the channel is. Now, if you're coming in the Eastern Channel and you come past the can coming in, the next can you see is 9.
Correct.
And that is somewhat misleading, because if you do that, if you go from can to can thinking that that's all wide open water and it's low tide, you get a surprise. That's my only point. Okay. Anything else for this August meeting? If not, I would like to thank you all very much. Joe, thank you for joining us. Give my best to Paul.
I will.
If there's anything I can do to help with that, let me know.
It sounds like Brianna's on top of it, like
Okay.
everything else. So
All right.
no, it's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Brianna. Thank you, Lori. George and Mike, thank you. And we will be in touch.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
the
Have a
weekend.
great
Thank you,
night.
bye.
Bye,
Take
guys.
care.